On today's episode, off-season report cards continue with Tommy Novak, the guy that I think surprised a lot of fans, but can he keep up his magical run for the next couple of seasons? Plus, a look at Kiefer Sherwood's season. Is he a dark horse to maybe make the team out of camp again next season? We'll talk about both today in the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. And a special shout out to all you loyal Locked On Pred heads who join us every single day. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Leading off real quick, Ann, can we talk about the Yaroslav Askarov dangle in last night's game?
I can't even with this young man. And I get it. Like, you just got to let these young people do their thing. But he causes me so much distress. It was just insane. And there is such a part of me that wants to just be sitting next to Carl Taylor, close enough to hear what he whispers under his breath when he watches that. Because Yaroslav, friend, you crazy. You crazy.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the clip, it's all over Twitter. The Milwaukee Admirals tweeted out. You can also find it on YouTube. But Yaroslav Askarov comes out of the net, doesn't just play the puck. He's going one-on-one with a Texas Stars guy who's coming fast, charging towards Askarov, gets the puck on his stick handles to his backhand past the forechecker, and then just makes an outlet pass off the boards. Yaroslav Askarov is the TikTok of Milwaukee Admirals. All the older hockey fans are what the hell? What is this? Why is this something you're doing? And then all the youth are yeah, that's based.
Yeah. He slaps.
Yeah, he slaps. We need to work on our.
We're not the young TikTokers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he is, I'm telling you, fun to watch. But that young man causes me a lot of gastrointestinal distress. Bless his heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of young people who bring us much joy, less distress maybe than Yaroslav Askarov when he's 20 feet out of the net trying to make a play. Let's talk about Tommy Novak. Now, This is a guy I think both you and I were excited to do a report card on. This was a guy who I think to say his season was unexpected, I think that would be a dramatic understatement, especially because we weren't quite sure we were ever going to see him up on the NHL level again as anything more than maybe just an emergency call-up.
Yeah.
Instead, earns a spot in the lineup around Christmas, comes through with 17 goals, 26 assists, and 43 points in 51 games. And if you stretch that scoring rate out towards an 82-game season, he would have been the third leading scorer on the Preds, third best scoring rate behind Yossi and Forsberg. Yeah, and I mean, everything about this season for Tommy Novak has been really fun. Let's start with our one word to describe Tommy Novak.
My one word to describe Tommy Novak is Laney Boggs. So I don't know if you remember the old teen rom-com She's All That with Freddie Prinze Jr. and I think it's Rachel Lee Cook. Did you ever see this movie, or is this a Pretty Woman thing again?
Is this, I get that one and 10 Things I Hate About You mixed up, but it's basically it's basically a modern version of My Fair Lady, right?
Yeah, and Pygmalion. Okay. Yes, it's a modern version of Yes, My Fair Lady and Pygmalion, which I love. The theater major in me is look at us recreating these classics. But in the story, for anybody who hasn't seen this classic teen rom-com. Lainey Boggs is like this kind of awkward, quiet, very overlooked girl at her high school. And then the BMOC on campus, Zach, makes a bet saying, I can make her prom queen in 6 weeks. And she gets this amazing makeover, and all of a sudden people are like, wow, she is really pretty. And then they get to know her and they're like, she's really cool. And of course, there's a giant misunderstanding, but in the end, Zach and Lainey Boggs end up together happy. And there's actually a quote at the end of the movie about Pretty Woman, but you won't get that because you haven't seen Pretty Woman. But anyway, this is the story of Tommy Novak. He is the My Fair Lady. He is the Lainey Boggs of the Nashville Predators, because this is somebody who I think you look at and you don't see quality NHLer necessarily looking on the surface. This is somebody who very easily overlooked by a lot of the Nashville Predators fan base. Somebody, like you said, we didn't think we were going to see him. And this season, Tommy Novak was the prom queen.
Yeah.
Lainey Boggs, baby.
Lainey Boggs, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I am going with going with Alan from The Hangover.
Oh gosh, I haven't seen that in so long.
That was what's his name? Zach Galifianakis's character.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And there's a scene where he's at the Vegas casino. He's kind of the same thing as Lainey Boggs, I guess, where he's like the overlooked guy, the goofball, the guy like Bradley Cooper is just kind of like, yeah, man, like, sure, come along, like that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he goes on a run where he goes to the casino and he learns to count cards, and he's sitting there like a genius. Yeah. And he's got the tuxedo on and the like the little bow tie, and he's just like sitting there very stoic as he's just racking up money after money after money and win after win after win, because he's just like so good at counting cards. And that's what it seems like Tommy Novak was doing, whereas he was just playing with house money. Yeah. Like, this is a guy that you're like, oh yeah, here's an AHLer who's, gonna have a good few games and had a few good games. That's like, oh yeah, this is like a fun thing. And then, the weeks go by and it's like, oh, look, he's on a pretty good run. Yeah, Tommy Novak. And then the months go by and you look at all the money he's piled up, all the points he's piled up. Come on. And you're like, have we been underestimating Tommy Novak? Like, is this more than an AHLer? Is this a guy that's like an NHL, maybe middle six, top line center kind of guy? Yeah. Like, have we just been underestimating what Tommy Novak can do long term for this organization the whole time?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, is it he was overlooked, or is he hitting his stride a little late? Now he's like, 26 years old, which is not old, but it's the whole, you got to do the hockey years thing. Yeah. But you look at his season with the Nashville Predators, and then granted, the Predators were without Forsberg for a while, Yossi and Duchene for a little bit, and Johansson for a little bit, but he ended up third in points, fourth in goals, third in assists, tied for third in plus minus, tied for third in power play goals, fourth in power play points. He first in shooting percentage, tied for second for game-winning goals, third fewest penalty minutes. So Tommy Novak's doing all these things, and he's not committing a lot of penalties. Like, so much about his season was high quality.
Yeah. And, it's funny because when he came up last season, he was hot right out of the gate. And a lot of people were like, man, Tommy Novak, like, this is a guy that we've been excited to see, and now he's up there and we're kind of having fun with it. And, it kind of tapered off. And I think a lot of people this year were kind of expecting like, okay, when's it going to taper off again? And it never came. When that leads to questions, it's like, okay, you look at it this season. Yes. He had some really good numbers. Shooting percentage is kind of high. There's extenuating circumstances with, half the team being gone and him kind of being the role of, kind of being the role of the guy later on. And that leads to questions about whether he can do this again next season.
Mm-hmm. It does. And one of the things that you mentioned in passing, I really want to focus on about Tommy Novak that stood out to me is his consistency, because we know that this season inconsistency has been the story of so many Nashville Predators players. But Tommy Novak, when you go back and you look at his game by game play, he had like a 5-game stretch in January where he didn't have any points. Then he had a little 3-game stretch in April with no points. But other than that, this is a player who was consistently putting up points. Like he would have a couple games with no points, but then he'd be right back at it. I mean, and we're talking multiple point games throughout the season and against some of these top teams. Vegas, he had a multiple point game. Minnesota, he did. So this is somebody who's not only just good against lesser teams. This is somebody whose game is good against some high quality teams too. And he's consistent, which is such a huge thing for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to me too, we talk about whether this is sustainable, whether he can keep it up. It's for somebody like Tanner Jeannot last year who scored a lot of gritty goals and wasn't able to kind of reproduce that success this season. You watch Tommy Novak's play, and, they're not fluke goals. He's making really good hockey plays to get to the front of the net, unleashing a really good shot through the slot, getting to high danger areas and kind of creating like moves that you would see, Matt Duchene or Filip Forsberg,
yes,
those kind of plays. And that's what makes me maybe more optimistic about Tommy Novak repeating this. Now, is he going to shoot 18% again, which is like Alex Ovechkin career numbers? Probably.
I mean, let's see.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not.
But I still think he is going to be a good piece moving forward. And that begs the question, what kind of piece do we see him being forward? Where does he fit in? I want to get more into that in just a second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. These are some of the most comfortable pants I think I've ever worn. And how am I able to say that? Because I'm wearing a pair right now and getting ready to head out the door later in my Bird Dogs. And not only do they feel great and comfortable, but they look good too. The stretchy fabric makes my legs look great, and they're comfier than my other shorts and pants. And they give me the freedom to wear one pair of shorts. I can do it, when I'm out walking about, grabbing, dinner with my girlfriend, whatever, or whether I need to like run down the street, whether I'm on the golf course, pickleball course, whatever. They fit through whatever. They fit for basically whatever situation I need. Yeah, I've heard that the college football nerds say they're the perfect pants for dads that have a little extra gut. Bird Dogs make them look great and feel comfortable. There's plenty of great reasons to get Bird Dogs. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL to try them yourself. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. I've seen the tumbler. I have the tumbler in my bag. It kicks ass. You're going to want to try this. So again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, promo code LockedOnNHL, and get your free Yeti style tumbler with every order. You're going to have to try it. All right, Ann, we're talking about Tommy Novak and where we potentially see him long-term fitting in for the Nashville Predators. What's your take on this? Is this a guy that really is like somehow the Preds have stumbled upon a top-line center, or is this a guy that's like, maybe a different role for the team?
I really wrestle with this, and I think we haven't maybe seen enough of the big picture to know for sure how this is going to pan out next season and down the road for Tommy Novak, because he comes in and as he is playing his games with Nashville, the Predators lose Duchene, they lose Johansson, they lose Forsberg. And so his role got bigger and he stepped into it and filled that role very, very well. But what is it going to look like when this team is all healthy and back on the ice? And I think it's going to be very interesting in training camp to see where they sort of start him in training camp. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where he finishes training camp, because I think those could be two very different things. Tommy Novak is a little bit unpredictable, not in the sense of his play and his skill set, but how is that going to fit in with what some of these other players are going to do or going to need to do in the offseason? This is a tough one to nail down for me. Do you think that Tommy Novak is Cody Glass, Ryan Johansson competitor for a top spot?
Well, next year, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just because of the success of this year. And I should point out, we talked about him, kind of taking over down the stretch. He played a big chunk of the year between Forsberg and Duchene while those guys were healthy. And he fit right in. Like, he looked like he was definitely not out of place. Like, he looked like he was holding his own out there against some good competition. Defensively, you think you would maybe want to see a little bit more. Like, John Hines was really, I think, kind of protecting where Tommy Novak was starting in the ice. Not a lot of defensive zone chances. I think if you really want to be like a surefire number one guy in the NHL, you kind of have to be the best of both worlds. You kind of got to start from anywhere. I think of guys like Patrice Bergeron, Zetterberg back in the day, guys that could really be able to take it anywhere on the ice and, hold their own on both ends. That's something I want to see more out of Tommy Novak's game. It's you brought it up because this is kind of like we haven't seen a big picture. This kind of feels like this is the season in which we see, okay, what is the big picture for the Nashville Predators? Because a lot of these guys who have had a lot of success last year, kind of under the context of everybody was hurt, they made their way into the lineup. I think this is the year that you put them on the ice with no expectations of postseason, nothing like we're going to go for it this year. I think you got to put them all together and go, okay, let's see what we have. Like, let's see if we can get 82 games of a top 6 caliber out of Tommy Novak, or let's see if we can get 82 games out of, Phil Tomasino as a top line guy, say with Luke Evangelista. I think this is the season that you're like, okay, what do we have? And then maybe at the end of that, that's when you determine, okay, what do we need? Where are we at as a franchise? Are we close enough that we can, start kicking around the tires on some bigger fish out there in the market? Right. Do we need to kind of take another step back because we don't really have enough yet? I think this is kind of going to be that make or break year for Tommy Novak.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that Tommy Novak, what we saw from him this season and what I hope to see from him going forward is I think that he is one of those players that you and I have talked about recently. We need players who make their line mates better. Yes. And down the stretch, we saw Tommy Novak with Luke Evangelista and Kiefer Sherwood. And this was a line combination that John Hines was very high on down the stretch, as some of the more veteran players were dropping like flies. And I think there is an element of Tommy Novak that may bring out a little bit more in younger players like Evangelista and Sherwood. But in training camp, let's see where he ends up. Is he going to be with some veterans? And what are we going to see there? I do agree with something you said earlier. Tommy Novak was not on the ice this season looking like an AHL player trying really, really hard. This was a guy who looked like an NHL player the whole time he was on the ice. And I think that's, I think that's really exciting. I do love what some of the other players have said about Tommy Novak and what they have noticed about him in the post locker room clean out press conference. Ryan Johansson was asked about Tommy Novak, and y'all, you just have to listen to Ryan Johansson's summary of Tommy Novak and his season. Take a listen.
Tommy's one of those guys that if we all look at him, he doesn't look like a specimen by any means or a crazy freak athlete. He's had probably only a few people in his career and when he's younger believing in him and that saw something in him. And when he's gotten his opportunities his whole career, and now in the NHL, he's found a way to be successful. And that self-belief was a lot of fun to watch within him and just being thrown in the fire and the opportunities to impact games, to win games for this club. And he went out there and did it. And he really surprised me, probably surprised a lot of you guys and a lot of fans. And it's like, who's Tom? There's Tommy Novak. Who's this guy? And couldn't be more proud of him. Back to inspiring watching him and just proud of him.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. I think you were in the press box once where somebody like looked at the roster and was like, who's 82?
Yes.
Like a road player.
It was it was somebody from, and I can't remember off the top of my head what team it was, but they kept pulling up their roster sheet and they're like, who is this 82? Because Tommy Novak kept doing Tommy Novak things. And they're like, wait a minute, who is that again? Who is that? And I'm like, friends, that is Thomas Novak. But I think Ryan Johansson is right. Like, if you bumped into Tommy Novak on the street, I would think he was probably like some guy who works at a startup and rides his skateboard to work. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he just doesn't strike you as personality wise or any, like, he just doesn't come off as like this like high quality NHL athlete. But this is a guy who is just doing his thing. He's just out there doing his thing, and he seemed so comfortable on the ice in the NHL. And I really, really hope we see that. He is not somebody who I think is going to make this moment feel too big for him, you know, with the opportunity that's in front of him in training camp in next season. Like, I think this is just a guy who's going to keep doing his thing. And I think it's going to be really helpful for the Predators.
Yeah. Tommy Novak was a guy that scored a lot towards the end of the year. And do you remember who scored at the very beginning of the year? The very first Nashville Predators goal of the season.
I do.
That is young Mr. Kiefer Sherwood, a surprise story this season, as someone whose season took a lot of twists and turns. We're going to get into his season in a little bit and whether we think we'll see him in a Preds uniform again next season.
First, want to let you know this episode's brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Look, for a championship team, it is all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, you need to visit eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Let's talk about young Mr. Kiefer Sherwood and the pride of Ohio.
This
is a guy that was the surprise inclusion on the Preds opening night roster, made the team right out of camp, jumped into the lineup in their first couple of games. He scored the first goal in Nashville Predators this season, wound up with an assist, but unfortunately could not keep that magic up. Went back to Milwaukee for the bulk of the season, came back up around March and had a pretty decent year. 7 goals, which is a career high, 6 assists, which ties his career high, and of course 13 points in 32 games. That's the best season he's ever had in the NHL. And what is your one word to describe Kiefer Sherwood's season in Smashville?
I guess I'm just in a movie zone when I'm thinking about these two players today. So my one word is Rudy. One of my all-time favorite movies, Rudy Rudiger. He strikes me very much like Rudy, who is this kind of undersized guy who just desperately wants to play for Notre Dame. And he works and works and works and works. And it's really his work ethic that gets him an opportunity. Now, I don't think that Kiefer Sherwood doesn't have talent. This is not a Rudy didn't have the ability, neither does Kiefer Sherwood. It's not that. But I do think in mindset, he is very similar. This has been a hard season for Kiefer Sherwood. Like, this is a guy who absolutely came out of nowhere in training camp, truly came out of nowhere. I was the guy at training camp going, who is that guy, going through my roster sheet, because he really surprised everybody. Like you said, made the roster. Then things kind of started to be a struggle for him, and he was sent back down to Milwaukee. But what I love about Kiefer Sherwood is he embraced the suck, as we say in our house. That could have been very discouraging, and perhaps it was discouraging, but what he did in Milwaukee was work on his game. What he did in Milwaukee is work his tail off, improve his game, do everything that he could there, so that when he got the chance again in Nashville, you could see that there was growth in that time in Milwaukee. And so for me, Kiefer Sherwood is very much the Rudy Rudiger of last season's team. Hard worker, embraced the suck, did what he needed to do. I don't think we're looking at somebody who's going to be, the future of the Nashville Predators per se, but he's doing a lot with what he has and with the opportunities he's given. So I like the Kiefer Sherwood story.
Yeah. To me, and Kiefer Sherwood is the bumper of a car, where it's like it's there, it serves its purpose, but it's not the most important part of the car.
Yeah.
Unless you get in a crash, and then you notice it. But hey, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors, everybody.
There you
go. Kiefer Sherwood, this is a guy who came down and came up with a lot of expectations. I think a lot of people saw him out of camp somewhat surprisingly over somebody like Phil Tomasino, who was kind of relegated and then sent back down to the minors. Played very well at the beginning and then went back to Milwaukee. And I just think when he came back, he did fine. Like, he didn't do anything that stood out as bad, didn't necessarily look out of place. I just didn't see anything that made him stand out as this is going to be like an everyday NHLer. But I love this story. Yes. I love the story of Kiefer Sherwood. I love seeing random people make hockey teams. I know there's a couple of you out there that don't necessarily like that. But I like the story of a guy who's, career minor leaguer, not really sure where his next NHL chance is going to be. And I love seeing him work his way into the lineup and making an impact. And he did. We mentioned that he scored the first goal of the season in that Prague series against San Jose. And then he scored 3 goals in the last 2 games of the season. So like a nice little bookend, I think, for Kiefer Sherwood's season.
Yeah. A couple of things that I like about Kiefer Sherwood. I think this is somebody who plays with a lot of speed, and we've seen, there have been times in games where that's been really important. He's very tenacious about the puck. I think sometimes, you kind of got to figure out what that fine line is, because he can end up in the penalty box maybe when you don't necessarily want him to. Yeah. But I think it was a really good season for him. It was an interesting line, and I talked about this earlier. John Hines really loved down the stretch that Evangelista, Novak, Sherwood line, because you have, Sherwood, who is very fast. He's very good at puck possession, recovering the puck, getting it to Evangelista and Novak to create some plays. My fear with Kiefer Sherwood is, can he keep up with those two guys' growth? And I'm not sure that he can. You know what I'm saying? Like, I see maybe different roles moving ahead for Novak and Evangelista, and I'm not sure that Sherwood is going to be on that kind of same trajectory. I do think this is somebody who I think this season could be, a really helpful bottom 6 guy, depending on how training camp goes, depending on what these guys do in the off season. And again, I'm with you. I really like his story. I love his mindset. I think he did a lot with the opportunities that he was given, when I think, like I said, his season was up and down, but I feel like he embraced the suck and created a lot of good things out of it. And not only did he score the first goal of the season, he scored the last goal of the season. So
yeah,
way to go, Kiefer.
Perfect little bookend on the season for Kiefer Sherwood. Preds re-signed him to a 1-year deal worth $775,000. That is a $25,000 raise from last year. So again, I think the Nashville Predators kind of see what we're seeing, which is a guy. If you asked me to put money on it, Ann, I would say he's probably in Milwaukee next season. But again, it's a situation with a lot of these guys we mentioned. It's like, if they're in Milwaukee, good. the Admirals are going to have a team that's probably the better fit for them. But if they're on here, then fine. It's not the end of the world, and there is a way in which the Preds can use them efficiently. And I think that's the key thing for Kiefer Sherwood. So again, 1-year contract, you get the feeling the Preds are going to give him another shot, especially out of camp to do it. So good for Kiefer Sherwood.
Absolutely. Love him. Really love him.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow is Friday, folks, and we're going to have some fun again. We're bringing back takes from a hat. A couple of topics around the league that we want to discuss that we will throw into. Also, some intriguing Preds questions. We're going to be doing that again tomorrow. And as we mentioned yesterday, we didn't get to do this at the trade deadline because actual big trades kind of derailed all of our coverage. But we are going to do a DIY trade segment coming up soon, where you guys are going to create the trades that you would like to see the Nashville Predators make this summer. Maybe it's getting somebody off the roster. Maybe it's bringing in somebody from another team that's been brought up in trade rumors. We want to hear your thoughts on this. So send them to us either at LO_Predators or just comment on any one of our YouTube videos, and we'll get to that later in the week. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at Penalty Box Radio and _NS Morgan on Twitter. Thanks to all of you guys for making us your first listen of the day. A reminder that Locked On Predators is your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, available on all major podcast platforms and on YouTube. All you have to do is search Locked On Predators on whatever platform you use and hit that subscribe button. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at LO_Predators to stay in the loop and chat with us during the offseason. We will see you guys tomorrow.